Welcome to my Full Life and Faith Leaps podcast with me, Tiffany Jo Baker, where we help you experience God's power and rest in your purpose and progress as you move forward step by step in all the things God has called and created you to do at home and around the world. Hello, you all, and welcome back to my Full Life and Faith Leaps podcast with me, Tiffany Jo Baker. I am really excited because we are going to be talking to one of my favorite people. She's a client, a mentor, a friend, and her name is Kathi Lipp. Kathi, thank you so much for joining me here today.
Well, the feeling is absolutely mutual. And I'm so glad to be on with you today. And thank you, because I love your podcast. So this is amazing.
You're so sweet. We just got to see each other in real life just a couple weeks ago in her mountain home in the El Dorado National Forest in California, planning and preparing all the amazing things that she does with her podcasts and ministry and books and all of that. So there is a number of topics that we could be talking about today. And we could talk all day, but specifically what we're going to be talking about is when God calls you in a different direction than expected.
Yes.
And you are no stranger to this.
Well, it's been very interesting. If you had told me 10 years ago that I'd be living here doing basically homesteading. Now, we are very light homesteaders, but I will say the night before last, we had a dinner that was entirely like from beginning to end created here on the mountain with, tomatoes that we grew, pesto that we made from the basil from our garden, eggs from our chickens, mozzarella. Now, we don't have anything to milk around here except for the dog, but we did not do that. We bought our milk, but we made mozzarella and baked the bread. And it's just like, wow, this is so different than where we were even 5 years ago. It's a totally different life.
So different, because I met you, I think it was 2017 is when we first got connected. And back then you were living in a condo in Silicon Valley, and you and Roger, couple years in, decided to, well, I don't want to tell your story. So why don't, you didn't wake up one day and be like, I want to leave our little condo and move to 33 wooded acres in the mountains. Like, that's just not something you just wake up and decide to do. So tell us a little bit about how that faith leap unfolded.
Yeah, so there's always a little stirring that God gives you, right? And by the way, when my husband and I got married, he said, by the way, I don't do like outdoor chores. Like, we're going to have somebody else mow the lawn. I'm like, that's fine. I am outdoor-ish. I am not outdoorsy. Like, I like to be outdoors with iced tea, but like, I have never been that person who's like, let's go kayaking. Like, no, that's just not who I am. But we both like the mountains, and we thought, wouldn't it be nice to have just like a little one room in the mountains to get away from Silicon Valley? I could use it to write. Roger likes to go on, he's the hiker in the family. We thought, wouldn't that be great? And our friends had a house that's about a half hour away from here, but as the crow flies, is probably closer to 3/4 of a mile. It's just because, mountain roads. And so we would go and use her cabin whenever she wasn't using it. And then she rudely decided to move to her house full time. And but now she's one of our favorite neighbors. But we had a longing. Yeah. We just had a longing. And so the longing started with, what if we had a room, to what if we could host writers retreats up here? Because I'm a writer and I love to teach. To okay, so we buy a house. Oh, it comes with acreage. And then a week before COVID, we decide to move up here full time. And that, I think God sometimes, when we're not brave enough to take the full leap, gives us breadcrumbs. Yeah. And we just go from what if to what if to what if to what if. And that's how you end up in an adventure that you never thought you'd be a part of.
That's amazing. It's that little stirring that
Hmm.
starts and grows because, for a lot of us, if he would reveal the big picture and the Z
Yeah.
from A, we would put the brakes on real quick. But if he gets us just for that next little yes, that next
Yes.
decision that lines up with our desires, it's not like he's taking us outside of what how we were made or created or will have longings and desires. It's absolutely in step and in stirring with the things that are inside of us.
Yeah. I don't think all of us are built for giant
Mm.
close your eyes leaps.
Yeah.
You know, for a lot of people, it's swinging from vine to vine, and you have to let go of one vine before you grab onto the next. That has never been me. I'm more of a stepping stone kind of person, which has probably missed me some opportunity. But also, God knows my nature. God knows me. And he knows how I'm built. And by the way, Roger is the least like he doesn't want the stepping stones. He wants the trail. He
Mhm.
is faithful to God, but he likes to know where he's going.
Mhm.
And so, but it has been a lot of, okay, we're going from one place to the next, but you're absolutely right. Like, we can trust God in all of these things, but we don't, God knows our nature.
Yeah, he does. And he works with it. And I love that you said that you're outdoors-ish and that
Mhm.
he told you he didn't want to do any outdoor chores because I do remember a couple years ago coming to your house and the water stopped and him and I went with a machete and buckets.
Machete.
Yeah, a
Yes.
machete and buckets and found the stream water or well water or
Yeah.
something to bring it back so we
The
could flush toilets.
yeah,
The creek, yes.
was the creek was free flowing, and you guys were out there with, and I love that you're like, I said, is there anybody who wants to go with Roger? And your hand darted up.
Sure.
I was
Yeah.
like, yeah, I'm like, I'll just stay here and wash the dishes with our bucket of water. You guys go out with your machetes.
With our
Well,
machetes.
you know, and when I said, Roger, we're buying 33 acres, you didn't want to mow a lawn. He goes, this, it's a totally different thing. It really is.
Yeah.
It's, he goes, land management is different than mowing your lawn in suburbia.
Yeah.
He's
Yeah.
like, there was no joy in that for me. He goes, but he has so much joy out here, really working the land, cutting down trees, clearing bush, all the things you have to do to live out here, to be responsible landowners. He
Mhm.
loves doing all that stuff.
I love it. I love it. I love just even seeing the journey that y'all have been on over the last so
Yeah,
many years. One of the things that you say is when you're following God, life is never boring.
it's so true. Right? I because I can keep my life very, very small
Mhm.
and safe.
Mhm.
But boring is another word for safe.
Mhm.
And I'll tell you, Tiffany, and I don't know if you sensed this from me, and it's okay if you did or you did not, but as we were getting towards retirement age, which Roger and I are both officially in, when we were living in Silicon Valley, my main thing was like, do I want to still keep working?
Mhm.
Like, it was more of like it felt like things were kind of naturally winding down.
Mhm.
And when we moved out here, it's not a winding down, it's a ramping up. It's like, I want more.
Mhm.
And not in a greedy way. I don't want necessarily more money or more stuff. I want more of what God has for me. And if you had asked me that 5, 6, 7 years ago, I'd say, of course. But was I actively pursuing it?
Mhm.
Not really. And now I'm like, okay, God, what's the next adventure? And sometimes the next adventure is going, like our church is an hour and a half away, but we're making it work.
Mhm.
But sometimes the next adventure is buying chickens. Like, I believe that God is in all of that. You know, I I I really do believe that because I write devotionals, and a
Mhm.
lot of my devotionals have revolved around chickens, and I wouldn't have had that material. There's a whole book I wouldn't have written, and it was called An Abundant Place. It's devotionals with my friend Sherry, that would not have been written had it not been for where we're living. God is in the big and the minuscule,
Hmm.
but God is in all of it.
So good. What what are some of the things that you could have allowed to keep you from saying yes and making the move?
Um, oh, everything. I mean, like I'm overwhelmed by the question because there were so many reasons not to do this.
Yeah.
Really, I like you said earlier, if God had revealed Z to A, my mind could not have conceived of all the things that needed to happen. I I am not a fan of going into something blind. However, had I known, like just 5 minutes before we jumped on this call, I was outside wrestling my little dog, getting it away from attacking a squirrel. If you had told me that I would be doing those kind of things, if you had told me that, I mean, the things that we've had to do to make our lives comfortable up here, not even comfortable as in cushy, but just livable,
Yeah.
I don't know that I would have done it.
Hmm.
I really don't. Like telling me that we were going to move up here without air conditioning. I and we do now have air conditioning, and thank you Jesus, because it's been 110 degrees. But I think uh, the detail and minutia
Hmm.
can sometimes get in the way of me trusting God.
Hmm. Yeah.
Like I couldn't deal with that in San Jose. I won't be able to deal with it in the forest. Well, that's not true. Like sometimes I there are so many times that God has given me what I needed here in the moment, but I couldn't imagine doing that before I moved here. Does that make sense? I'm not
Yes.
saying go into things stupid.
Yeah.
That's not what I'm saying. But if we have to figure everything out before we take the next step, we probably are not going to take the next step.
So true. And I feel like, especially, and your circumstances are show it so well, it's awakened new and different parts of you.
Oh my goodness. Yes. Yes. I like, I am gardening this is extreme gardening. Like yeah, I used to garden because things look pretty in my backyard. Now we're gardening to eat
Yeah.
because, and we're gardening to preserve. Because we can't go to the store if we run out of tomatoes. We just can't. I am learning about just water management and fire management and all these things that they were not of interest to me 5 years ago, but now they've become an important part of our lives. Raising chickens, I it was never. This is awakened desires that I didn't know I had. And I think that all of us, and I know this for you, like this was not even a question for you. Like we all have some of that homesteading spirit.
Mhm.
We all do. I know you do. And but we can start to investigate that homesteading spirit no matter where we call home. We
Mhm.
don't have to live on acreage in order to have chickens. We don't have to live on acreage in order to make our own cheese. We don't have to live on acreage in order to be frugal and start to save money on things that we can't. And so we can start to explore our own resourcefulness, our own creativity, no matter where we live. And it's just been amped up here because we have a little room to play and it's okay to have chickens where we live. And, we just had a bear come through. Um, Tiffany, I'm not going to lie, I've never done so much research on using urine as a deterrent for wildlife
Yeah.
in all of my days. Like if you had told me that's what I'd be
Right.
researching, I would have run the other way. But now it's like, no, I'll do what I have to do to protect my chickens.
Yeah.
We're learning.
And you sound so fulfilled. It's different from when you're sitting at a desk all day, which is great and
Right.
fulfilling and
Yes.
checking off lists. But when you're working with your hands, when you're being creative, when you're being
Yes.
resourceful, when you're producing things literally so that you can eat and survive and enjoy and stay be healthy, like that's another level of fulfillment.
You know what? I think we all contain multitudes, don't we? And uh, I don't drink, but I've been learning about wine. And when you learn about wine as a Christ follower, you can't help but think about Jesus and the vineyard and wine and the wedding and all of those things. And it's like all meshes. It's all so interesting and so fascinating. And like not being an outdoorsy person, I and coming from Silicon Valley where there's two seasons, pack an umbrella, don't pack an umbrella. And let me just tell you, pack an umbrella season is very short. But to see God's glory in the seasons, that's something I've never really appreciated before. And I think it's so interesting that this is really awakened in my 50s.
Yeah,
Like
well,
this has all happened since I turned 50,
mhm.
and I love it. And so I think part of what our story talks about is don't be afraid to be weird. Like our kids, they want to commit us. They really do. Like we started looking for other properties because the winters here can get pretty severe. And they're like, well, can't you just go stay at mom's? Yeah, my mom lives in town and has room for us. We're like, yeah, but we can bring the chickens to her backyard, but we can't bring the rooster. And so our daughter was like, so what you're telling me is you're looking to invest like $150,000 because of a rooster. And I'm like, well, I kinda. And they're ready to have us committed. But so we've come up with a plan B. We did figure out that maybe that wasn't our wisest investment. Um, our rooster may be going to spend time with friends that get less snow.
There you go.
So that may
Yep.
be, but you know what? I also love my rooster. And I think it's okay to have what God has called you to do, but that isn't always just one thing. Because sometimes you meet other people that you're supposed to be in community with at the cut flower class
Yeah.
or at the extension on canning. So I think part of the reason that God gives us joy is so that others can see that joy that only comes from God and following who he is and getting to talk about it in really fun and exciting ways.
Well, it's so inspirational, because we can follow you vicariously and be like, if Kathi can do it, if Kathi and Roger can do it, we can too. My husband and I
Right.
we're a week away from taking our girls to college. For the first time, we'll be empty nesters for however long that lasts. And so I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, what are him and I going to start doing? Like, what is it that we
Right.
want to start learning or start being a part of or doing? And to be able to do that with your spouse and to just go on this adventure with God, with your spouse, like how fun is that?
Tiffany, I know this isn't a marriage podcast, but since you opened the door, I'm just going
Yeah,
to
go for
shove
it.
my way through it a little bit. There has been the best part of this whole adventure has been seeing Roger be his full self.
Yeah.
I just and this was not a shrinking violet in Silicon Valley.
Mhm.
He's a powerful, wonderful guy who has served his church
Yeah.
faithfully for decades. But to see him building fences, to see him planting gardens, I cannot tell you, we have 3 sunflowers out here. They bring him more joy than just about anything. And we have faced a ton of really extreme because
Yeah.
you and I are friends and we talk all the time. Last winter, we were up to our shoulders in snow. We couldn't leave for a really long time. The winter before that, we were snowed in and our generator failed. The summer before that was the Caldor fire that started a mile and a half from our house and burned a couple of acres of our property. Like our dog got lymphoma, and like there has been challenge after challenge after challenge, and to see how not only he has relied on God, but and we believe in leading each other depending on what the circumstances call for. Sometimes I lead because I am better at things inside the house. And sometimes he leads because he is better at things outside the house. And I would say he is somebody who is better at the faith stuff than I am, but I might be a little better at the joy stuff than he is. And so to see God bring out the best in your spouse, and that's really what this common goal, I think so often we can be so frustrated with our spouse because we're there's nothing for us to be pulling towards together.
Yep.
And when you have a big dream, there is so often something to pull towards together, especially when your kids leave the house. It it's been the best decision we've ever made, truly, for us as individuals, as followers of Christ, and as a couple.
It's such a beautiful reminder of, we're all just getting started. Like every day is a
Yes.
new day. His mercies are new every morning. We have choices that we make every day. We have longings, we have desires, we have giftings, and God's not through with us. If you're listening and you're breathing, God is not through with you. He has made you with a specific, purposeful DNA, interests, and experiences that all mesh together to beautifully walk out a journey. And he wants you to walk it out with him. And so to put him in that seat and to do it with the Lord, talk about fulfilling and fruitful.
It, you said something earlier that I'm going to share in every single interview. Pay attention to the stirring.
Mhm,
Because I've always had this little weird homesteady stirring.
mhm.
And I'm like, but Kathi, you live in Silicon Valley. This is not your destiny. You get to do so many other things. Don't be greedy with all the things you want to do. But you know what? This has opened up a whole new life for us. And Tiffany, you're one of the smartest, most strategic people I know. But I'll tell you how I feel. I feel like I'm just getting as smart as I need to be for so many of the dreams I have. Like it's been practice up till now. And like, okay, now I'm going for it. Like I really figure at this point that the things I still want to do, there is nothing I don't want to become an Olympic gymnast. Can we all agree we're probably past that? That was never really a desire of mine anyway. But I want to learn, it's a much more modest goal. I want to learn to make a crazy, amazing loaf of bread. But the reason I want to learn to make that is because I love taking things to my neighbor. I love serving the people who live near me. And I am not winding down, I'm just getting wound up.
Oh, yeah.
And so I want to learn to do these things. I want to learn to do the flower arrangement. I want to learn to make the cheese. I want to learn to do it all. And I'm just crashing head first into it. And I, there's so much ahead. There's so much ahead, and
So
I'm
much
so
ahead.
excited to get it.
So much ahead. So if you've been listening and you maybe have a little bit of a stirring, maybe the stirring is because you're intrigued by homesteading. Maybe it's because you're wanting to make a big change in your life and you're worried it's too late. Maybe it's because you felt God calling you in a different direction than what's expected. Or maybe you just want to create a simpler life right where you are. Y'all, this book that Kathi Lipp has written is called The Accidental Homesteader. And those are the 4 things in the introduction that talks about that the type of people that should be reading this book. Not only is it just beautiful, but you're going to hear more stories of Kathi, Roger, their dog Moose, their chickens. She gives some amazing, simple recipes that you can do from your garden or from your grocery store. It's okay either way. And it's just a beautiful, inspiring, fun book that will just keep you on the adventure with the Lord, big or small. Kathi, thank you so much for joining me here today.
Tiffany, it's so my pleasure. And I'll just mention
Yeah,
2
please.
things really, really quickly. One, if you're looking for my favorite recipes in there, are the apple cake,
Mm.
so good, and the quick queso.
Ooh,
Try
okay.
that quick. Those are bangers. Everybody's going to love them. Also, if you go to accidentalhomesteaderbook.com and you put in your receipt, we have a simple living guide that
Mm.
has a bunch of the recipes, some DIY stuff, some great photography. You're just going to love it. So we'd love to give you that as our gift. And I'm going to say one last thing,
Yeah.
and then I promise um, I've done a bunch of interviews on this. This has been my favorite interview. You
Oh.
are so you ask such great questions, and you are so insightful. Thank you so much for having me on.
Oh, thank you, Kathi. And y'all need to get this book and get in on the pre-order bonuses. Um, Kathi, I love calling you friend.
Back at you.
It's been so much fun. So y'all, I'll put out all of Kathi's information in the show notes. You can follow her on social media. She's got 2 weekly podcasts, Clutter Free Academy and Writing at the Red House. All of the things
Which
Kathi,
Tiffany produces.
which,
Tiffany produces those. She's
which
amazing.
I'm a part of and love to be behind the scenes of those. Y'all, thank you so much for joining me here again at my Full Life and Faith Leaps, just helping you experience more of God's power and find rest in your purpose and your progress. Bye, y'all. See you next time.
Well, friends, thank you for joining us today on my Full Life and Faith Leaps podcast. If you enjoyed our time together and are taking away a nugget that has inspired your soul and success, would you share this episode with a loved one who could use it too? And if you haven't already, take a moment to rate and review this podcast and help me help others fuel and fulfill their faith journeys. Until next time, I'm Tiffany Jo Baker, a 3-time surrogate, speaker, and strategizer who loves to help you birth your God-given dreams at home and around the world. Now go do all the things God has called and created you to do with the grace and gifts God has given you.